9 experienced hikers set out into the Ural Mountains in January 1959. None of them would return alive. This is the story of the Dyatlov Pass Incident, one of the most terrifying unsolved mysteries in history. The group leader was Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old engineering student. His team consisted of 8 other experienced hikers, all in their early 20s except for one man who was 37. They were skilled, they were prepared, and they were confident. Their goal was simple: reach Otertin Mountain, about 200 miles north of their starting point. The route was classified as Category 3, the most difficult level, but for this group, it should have been manageable. On January 27th, they began their trek. The first few days went smoothly. One member, Yuri Yudin, fell ill and turned back. He would be the only survivor, though he never climbed again after what happened. The remaining 9 continued into the mountains. According to their last diary entries, spirits were high. They were joking, taking photos, documenting their journey. Everything seemed normal. On February 1st, they reached the eastern slope of Holatsyok Mountain. The name means Dead Mountain in the local Mansi language. They decided to camp there for the night, even though the location was unusual. Experienced hikers don't normally camp on exposed mountain slopes. They had passed better locations earlier. That night, something happened. Something so terrifying that it made 9 experienced hikers cut through their own tent from the inside and run barefoot into the freezing darkness. The temperature was -30 degrees. When they didn't return as scheduled, a search party was sent out on February 20th. What they found would haunt them forever. The tent was discovered first. It was still standing, covered in snow, but it had been slashed open from the inside with long cuts made by knives. The hikers' belongings were still there, including their boots, warm clothes, and supplies, everything they needed to survive. Footprints led away from the tent, down the slope toward the forest. Some prints were from bare feet, others showed socks or a single shoe. The prints suggested the hikers were walking, not running, but they were definitely leaving in a hurry. About a mile from the tent, under a large cedar tree, rescuers found the first 2 bodies. Yuri Krivonichenko and Yuri Doroshenko were dressed only in underwear. Both were barefoot. The branches on the cedar tree were broken up to 15 feet high, suggesting someone had climbed it, perhaps to see something or to escape something. Between the cedar tree and the tent, searchers found 3 more bodies over the following days. Igor Dyatlov was found first, then Zina Kolmogorova, then Rustem Slobodin. All 3 had been trying to return to the tent. They were found in positions suggesting they had died while crawling back up the slope. These 5 deaths could almost be explained by hypothermia. Almost. But the details were strange. Some had removed their clothes and given them to others. Krivonichenko's body showed burns on his hands and legs. Slobodin had a small crack in his skull. And critically, all of them had left the tent without proper clothing in deadly cold. What could make experienced hikers do that? The real horror came 2 months later. On May 4th, the remaining 4 bodies were found in a ravine about 250 feet from the cedar tree, buried under 12 feet of snow. They were better dressed than the others, wearing clothes that had been cut from those who died first. But these 4 had not died from the cold. Ludmila Dubinina was missing her tongue, eyes, and part of her lips. Her chest was crushed with such force that experts compared it to a high-speed car crash. Semyon Zolotaryov had similar massive chest injuries. Alexander Kolovatov had a deformed neck and a missing eyebrow. Nikolai Thibault Brignol had severe skull damage. The medical examiner stated that the force required to cause these injuries was extremely high, similar to what you'd see in a car accident. Yet there were no external wounds, no cuts, no bruises on the skin. The damage was all internal, as if they had been subjected to intense pressure. Even stranger, high levels of radiation were detected on some of the clothing, not enough to kill, but definitely unusual. The Soviet investigators examined every possibility. Infighting among the group? No evidence of that. Animal attack? No animal tracks were found, and the injuries didn't match. Avalanche? The slope wasn't steep enough, and the tent was still standing. The official conclusion was listed as a compelling natural force. That was it. No explanation of what that force was. The case was closed and the files were sealed. But the evidence tells a different story. Whatever happened that night was sudden and terrifying enough to make 9 people abandon their only shelter and run into certain death. They didn't panic randomly. They made deliberate choices. They cut the tent carefully. They walked in an organized line down the slope. Some even climbed a tree. They were escaping something. But what? Local Mansi people reported seeing strange orange spheres in the sky that night. Other hikers in the area, about 30 miles away, reported seeing glowing orbs on the horizon. Military records later confirmed that the area was used for secret testing, though details remain classified. The tongue, eyes, and lips missing from Dubinina's body? The medical examiners suggested decomposition and scavenger animals. But her body was frozen solid in the ravine. What scavenger could access a body under 12 feet of snow? The radiation? Never fully explained. Some suggest the victims had been exposed to radioactive materials before the trip, possibly through their work or studies. But why only some of them? The massive internal injuries with no external damage? This remains the most puzzling aspect. You don't get that kind of trauma from falling or fighting. You get it from immense, even pressure applied to the entire body at once. In 2019, 60 years after the incident, Russian authorities reopened the case. Their new conclusion? An avalanche. They used computer models to show that a small, delayed slab avalanche could have hit the tent, causing the hikers to flee. But this theory doesn't explain the radiation, the missing body parts, the massive internal injuries, or why experienced hikers would camp in an avalanche zone. The truth is, we still don't know what happened on Dead Mountain that night. 9 people went into those mountains with experience, equipment, and confidence. 9 people made the deliberate choice to run into a frozen wilderness rather than stay in their tent. What did they see? What did they hear? What kind of terror makes you choose certain death over staying put? The Dyatlov Pass Incident remains open. The mountain keeps its secrets, and somewhere in those frozen slopes, the answer to one of history's darkest mysteries still waits to be found.